Mm, let's see. Let me get you the co-host. I was gonna look for the thread and the book in the jumbotron. You got it, the co-host. It still shows you. Oh,
I gotcha.
okay.
I have it in my bookmarks.
Mm, see, so I fucks with you. You're just so fucking smart
What?
and amazing
Because I put in the bookmarks.
because you're just perfect.
Thank you, baby.
Mhm.
Okay, I put it up there.
So I'm gonna go ahead and start reading. Oh, let me grab my water. I- Okay. I finally went before the parole board in April 1970, and even though I did not expect anything from them, I looked forward to the chance for debate and the opportunity to show my contempt for their system. 7 or 8 board members sat with me around a table, talking casually and drinking coffee. One of the first things they asked me about were the violation reports in my folder, which said I had contraband in my cell. I asked them if they knew what the nature. Oh shit, hold on. Damn, Netflix just come cut in there. Rude. Okay, let me. One of the first things I asked me about were the violation reports in my folder, which said I had contraband in my cell. I asked them if they knew what the nature of the contraband was, and it turned out they had not looked closely enough to see. When they read the violation reports in full, they were surprised to find that the so called contraband was soap, deodorant, and toilet articles from the canteen, which had been passed on to me by other inmates. I told them I refused to do without certain basic amenities and that I would continue to obtain them. They ordered the guards to allow toilet articles in my cell. This was a small but sweet victory. Then we got into the heavy things. The reasons for my refusal to work, etc. I was ready for them. But when I gave my explanation, they replied that I wanted to pick and choose the rules I would obey and that this was a very arbitrary attitude. I responded by expressing a total lack of faith in the penal system and the parole board and let them know that I did not expect parole then or any other time. I told them I was willing to obey rules I disagree with, but I would never obey rules that denied my dignity as a human being. Furthermore, I urged them to disobey those rules that violated their integrity and dignity. One of the board members, a Negro, was so shocked that he expressed doubt about my sanity. This is a good example of the mentality controlling prisons across the land, one so narrow that it regards human dignity and strength of character as abnormal. After the hearing, I resolved never to go before a parole hearing again, even though my attorneys advised against this decision. The prisons definitely needed to be transformed, but this cannot be accomplished in a vacuum or by random incidences. Prisons are an integral part of a complex whole that can be defined as the American institutional superstructure of the world. I say the world because the United States is an empire, not a nation, and the way prisoners and minorities are treated here has a definite relation of the way the American power structure treats people around the world. The world must become a place in which poor and oppressed people can live in peace and with dignity. If we still need prisons after that transformation, it must be true rehabilitation centers rather than concentration camps. In the new society, the centers would not be called prisons or penal institutions, and they would not be ancient rock fortresses in inaccessible areas. They would be an important part of the community in which people who are not well or who are unhappy in the community, or who are unhappy would still be made to feel that they are part of humanity. Most of the men in prison have been made to feel superfluous. I don't know how to say that word from birth. James Baldwin has pointed out that the United States does not know what to do with this black population now that they are no longer a source of wealth, are no longer to be bought and sold and bred like cattle. This country especially does not know what to do with its young black men. It is not at all accidental, he says, that the jails and the army and the needle claim so many. Many now recognize that most of the people in prisons do not belong there, when they can be motivated to believe that they have something to offer society, something desperately needed, which only they can contribute, then there will be no need for prisons. But each man must first be convinced of his own value and uniqueness, and that uniqueness is his and his only to give to others. That is what true rehabilitation means. All the time I was at St. Louis, Charles Gary and his staff were working to appeal my conviction before the California Court of Appeals. Their proceeding was based on a number of improper maneuvers that had been used by the prosecution in their determination to convict me. Among them were the grand jury as well as the trial jury was illegally tainted with racism. My previous conviction of felony should have been struck. The evidence for the first-degree murder conviction was not sufficient. The prosecution suppressed material evidence, and the trial judge failed to reopen the trial when it was discovered. The trial judge contributed to the highly charged atmosphere and made many prejudicial rulings. The judge had failed to give the jury an important instruction. My attorneys followed the appeal process closely and kept me advised of every step, but I took little notice, having no faith in the court system. They had kept me in jail without bail for almost a year while awaiting trial. Then after the conviction, they denied me bail pending an appeal. Even when we appealed the decision denying bail, we were given no consideration. I could find no reason to hope that the state would reverse my conviction. As far as I was concerned, I would pull 15 years in the penitentiary and pull it in isolation. Faye Stender, who had worked with Charles Gary on my defense, sent word in May of 1970 that a decision would be issued shortly. She did not know what it would be, of course, but apparently the court had written a very long opinion. Usually, in the case of a public figure, a long opinion means a denial because the court wants to show the public that they have given careful consideration to every point of view. So Faye sent word to expect a denial. Another attorney, Alex Hoffman, held the opposite view. He argued with Faye that a long opinion could mean a reversal. The court might want to show very carefully that the reversal was based on legal technicalities rather than upon the weight of public opinion, which in my case was felt by the courts and the correctional system. I sided with Faye and gave the appeal no more attention. I had other things to concentrate on. And so when the reversal of my conviction by the California Appellate Court was announced on Friday, May 29th, it came as a complete surprise. I had spent the day in the visiting room hearing nothing, and about 4:30, I was on my way back to my cell when a prisoner stopped me and said that he had heard on his radio that my conviction had been reversed. I did not believe him, and he could scarcely believe it himself, so I asked him to recheck. When I got back to the guard in charge of my tier got red-faced when he saw me. He said nothing, just turned the color of fresh cooked lobster and fumbled his key while locking me in my cell. Only then did I begin to suspect that something good had happened. Outside in the yard beneath my window, I heard a great commotion. A group of prisoners were gathered there, throwing up rocks and clapping hands. They were so happy and excited that I began to feel optimistic too. Prisoners are not allowed to congregate in groups of more than two in the prison yard, but these men were defying the rule. When the guards approached them, the inmates took their identification cards and threw them on the ground in violation of a regulation that requires inmates to surrender their identification cards to guards on demand. After they had thrown them in the dirt, they stood their ground without moving. The guards kept at a distance and did not advance. The prison officials were upset by the reversal and angry at the inmates for demonstrating in my support. They tried everything they could think of to dampen the enthusiasm that spread throughout the jail, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The only mention of my reversal ever made to me by prison officials was the question of how I could possibly be released before the new trial, since bail was rumored to be at $200,000. The reversal, 200. Yeah, I'm tripping, sorry, y'all. The reversal by the appellate court was based on Judge Friedman's incomplete instruction to the jury. He had told the jury that I could be found guilty of murder in the first degree, murder in the second degree, manslaughter, or I could be found not guilty. But he neglected to tell the jury that there were two possibilities within the manslaughter category, voluntary or involuntary. Voluntary would mean that the jury felt I had acted in the heat of passion and after severe provocation, but that I had killed the policeman. This was the verdict that the jury did return. There was also a possibility of involuntary manslaughter, which would mean I had been unconscious at the time as the result of shock and loss of blood, but that I acted without being aware of what I was doing. The judge did not give this instruction to the jury, even though we had introduced expert testimony showing that the wound I received and the subsequent loss of blood, verified by hospital records, was consistent with the possibility of neurotic shock. Therefore, the appellate court ruled that since the jury had not been given all the possibilities for reaching a verdict, my conviction was to be reversed and I would have to stand trial once more. But I cannot be tried for murder again, only manslaughter. If the jury had found me guilty of involuntary manslaughter, the court could not have imposed a jail sentence on me. Even though I had to wait 90 days for the decision to become final, I began immediately to make plans for my departure. Needless to say, I was eager to get out, but also apprehensive about what my life would be like when I returned to Oakland. I felt I would not be ready to plunge back into things until I had a chance to look around and get a picture of the entire situation. I have been off the block for almost 3 years. My departure from the California penal colony seems like a dream now. Psychologically, I had prepared myself for a longer stay, and my freedom seemed a lucky extension of life, a chance to accomplish more than I expected. I wanted to get the Black Panthers back on the right track, taking action that could be done only in conjunction with my comrades in the Central Committee. Early in August, word came from my attorneys that I would be getting out soon, since I had a bail hearing coming up on August 5th, a Wednesday. The Friday before, I spent packing my things in case they decided to move me over the weekend, but nothing happened. Then on Monday, I went through the whole. Sorry, I got a text message. I sent packing. I sent packing my things in case they decided to move me over the weekend, but nothing happened. Then on Monday, I went through the whole release process, but I did not leave that day either. No one, including the warden, seemed to know exactly what was going on. He asked me to tell him what time I was leaving and on what date. I guess he thought I had some special word from my attorney because, according to him, the Alameda County Sheriff's Department would not tell him how I was going to be transported or when. There was some legal entanglement. Even though my conviction had been reversed, the California Appellate Court had given the state attorney general, a 30-day extension to appeal their decision. So technically, my fate was still in California Appellate Court's hands, and I could not be removed until those 30 days were up. However, Charles Gary worked out an arrangement with the Attorney General to get me released. The Attorney General did not want too much of a fight because public opinion was in my favor, and people would want to know why I had to sit there for another 30 days after all their legal maneuvers had been exhausted. I was in limbo. That Monday, August 3rd, I was all checked out and ready to go. I'd been having interviews constantly with a number of television and newspaper reporters who had come to see me. All day long, I walked around the joint, going from the yard up to the visiting room for interviews and then back to my cell. A rumor circulated that I was supposed to leave at 12 noon. The inmates were very excited. Every time I went for an interview, they would say, "Well, he's gone. I saw him get into the car." And then I would show up again in the yard and they would be let down because I was spoiling the rumors. Then they would ask me again, "When are you leaving? Why do you keep starting to leave?" Finally, just to stop the questions, I told them I was not leaving until the end of the week. Privately, I was pretty sure that the Alameda County Sheriff's Department would want me to leave in secret and therefore would probably come to get me very late at night. That was why they had not given the warden a definite time. They did not want to wade through the 30 or 40 reporters standing outside the gate. I told only a few friends that I might leave that night. I was particularly close with one inmate at San Luis. He was happy that I was getting out, but he was also depressed because another friend had just left a few days before. Now I was leaving, and he would be pretty much alone. He had done a long time in prison and had no definite idea of when he would be getting out. Most inmates who pull a long time become somewhat introverted and stay in their cells most of the time. On the final day, I went back to the visiting room after dinner and was interviewed until about 9:30. Then I returned to the yard for the general lockup at 10 p.m. While I stood outside talking to several inmates, a guard came out and saw me. He knew I was supposed to be back in my cell, but he just said, "Well, you don't have to lock up." I had never been given a break before, and I thought that was pretty strange. But since only about 30 minutes remained before general lockup, I decided that they were overlooking an infraction this once, and I went on talking with my friends. About 10 minutes later, 5 or 6 guards, the Red Squad, A roving group of guards assigned to watch subversives appeared in the yard and came over to me saying, "You know we have to lock you up." It was an obvious setup. They were resentful because I was leaving and were looking for trouble at the last minute. My friends encouraged me to resist them by refusing to go to my cell, but I knew if I started to fight, they would be involved too. I did not mind a fight. I was leaving, but my friends had to stay. I did not want them to be subjected to further prison discipline, maybe a delay in their parole dates, or even a new beef against them. Besides, general lockup time was near, so we had little to gain from a fight. I went to my cell after saying a few more words to them. The guards were true to form right up to the end. They could not get in the last blow. That would be mine when I walked through those gates, but they got in as many licks as they could. The day had been extremely tiring, so sleep came quickly. It seemed as if I had been sleeping only a few minutes, although it was actually 2:30 a.m. when the guards opened the door and told me to roll it up. I had turned in all my prison clothes except underwear, pants, shirt, and my own shoes. I put them on. The cop asked if I had a jacket. It was pretty chilly out, but I had turned it in. When I came out of the cell block into the yard, it felt cold but nonetheless refreshing. I had a kind of misty chill. As I walked into the cool night air, I realized that never again, or at least not for a long time, would I take that walk from my cell to the central area where processing is done. I went through the strip search again, taking everything off and having my mouth, ears, nose, and anus probed. They searched my pockets. There was little I wanted to take out of that prison, but the ritual proceeded as usual. Then I was given release clothes, a pair of khaki pants and a khaki shirt, but they kept my jail underwear and socks. I signed my release papers, and next I was taken to another room to await the arrival of the men from the sheriff's department. One guard was stationed in the room with me, and he tried to start a conversation. He told me about his record collection, his elaborate stereo component and multiplex system. Then he talked about how he had been a brawler when he was young and how his nose had been broken over and over again. When he had first started work at the penitentiary, he said, he used to get into a lot of fights with inmates, but he found out later that it was better to call other cops before the convicts got out of line and jumped him. Why he attempted this conversation is hard to figure out, but I guess he was trying to let me know that he realized he could no longer consider me his inferior. Since our convict guard relationship had changed, he wanted me to know that he was a human being with certain thoughts and feelings. He even offered me a cigarette, but I told him I did not smoke. Then he went into a long monologue about how he almost got cancer from smoking, that he had, uh, I don't know how to say that word, pleurisy, and had caught it just in time. He went on and on, mostly talking to himself. Guards are odd people. It is incomprehensible to me how a person can endure such a meaningless life day after day, year after year, and seem to be satisfied with it. Their main corners are dull and petty, centered around retirement, lawns, fishing, hi-fi sets. This guard was near retirement. People like him are really lost, as so many people are, without a purpose in life or the ability to relate to others. Finally, at 3:30, I was told the sheriff's men had arrived. I took my 2 boxes of legal material. They were all I could carry and started down the hallway. The guard followed me resentfully with my typewriter and another small box. When I got a short distance from the room, the warden and his assistant met me and wished me luck on my release. It was like a scene from Kafka or Genet's The Balcony, normal and logical on the surface, but nightmarish and phantasmorical in essence. It had the quality of a symbolic ritual. No one was truly involved or affected. We simply went through the motions. I walked through the visiting room and out the open gates. The first time I had gone through them, I had arrived by bus the back way. Then we walked down the stairs and toward the main gate of the prison, the last barrier. As we approached, the electric gate buzzed and ground open. This made the whole scene even more unreal because no one could be seen opening the gates. They simply parted when we stepped towards them. 2 deputy sheriffs in plain clothes were waiting beside two uniformed guards from the penal colony. The cops greeted one another. They were old buddies. I signed some final papers confirming that I had all my property, and once more, I was in the control of the Alameda County Sheriff's Department. Grab some water right quick. That's the end of that one. This is part 6.
Period.
Mm, babe, I can keep reading. It's no problem. Did you want me to read more?
It's up to you and your capacity to be.
I got you. Let's see. Part 6. There's an old African saying, I am we. If you met an African in ancient times and asked him who he was, he would reply, I am we. This is revolutionary suicide. I, we, all of us are the one and the multitude. This quote is from the autobiography of W. Du Bois. What turns me cold in all this experience is the certainty that thousands of innocent victims are in jail today because they had neither money, experience, nor friends to help them. The eyes of the world were on trial despite the desperate effort of press and radio to suppress the facts and cloud the real issues. The courage and money of friends and of strangers who dare stand for a principle freed me. But God only knows how many who were as innocent as I and my colleagues are today in hell. The daily stagger out of prison, doors embittered, vengeful, hopeful, ruined. And of this army of the wrong, the portion of Negroes is frightful. We protect and defend sensational cases where Negroes are involved, but the great mass of arrested or accused Black folk have no defense. There is desperate need of nationwide organizations to oppose this national racket of railroading to jails and chain gangs, the poor, friendless and Black, the autobiography of W. Du Bois. The section is called Release. There was no time to feel relief, let alone an illusion of freedom once I had come through the gates. Before I got my bearings, one of the deputy sheriffs came over to me. We're going to have to shackle you, he said. I did not reply. They put chains around my waist and another one. Oh, wait. They put chains around my waist and under my crotch. 2 chains went from my waist to each wrist and another from. Sorry, I'm childish. I'm indoctrinated. I heard 2 chains and was about to like literally say it in the accent. I'm
Please,
sick.
you are so silly. Yo.
Then they shackled my ankles and ran a chain from my crotch to the chains on my ankles. Finally, they put a 6-inch chain from one ankle to the other, so that I had to shuffle when I walked. I could barely move my arms. The police carried my boxes while I shuffled about 25 yards to an unmarked car. I got in and tried to find a comfortable position. It was not easy. The 2 deputies got in front. While one of them was starting the engine, the other one said, Wait a minute, I have to get my equalizer out the trunk. I glanced back as he was coming around the car and saw him putting what looked like a snub-nosed .38 revolver in his belt. With his gun and me in chains, I guess we were equal. I had not been in the automobile for 22 months, and it felt strange to be speeding down the highway at 80 miles an hour. We passed a large sign saying Huey Road, which pointed off to the right. I had seen it on the bus coming to Penal Colony, and I remember telling the other inmates the last time they saw Huey, he was tearing up Huey Road at high speed. This time I passed it without imagining myself taking off up that little dirt road. The deputy talked to each other. The deputies talked to each other about how stupid it was of President Nixon to make the statement about Charles Manson the day before. I agree with them about Nixon's stupidity. It did not surprise me to learn that he had made a remark that violated the ethics and principles of the legal profession. Nixon is a man who should never stray from his speechwriter's notes because every time he does, he sticks his foot in his mouth. Now there was a possibility that Manson would have to be given a new trial. The deputies asked me what I thought my bail would be. I told them I had no idea. They guessed somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000, and went on speculating about the amount and whether I would get out or not. I assured them that I would be released immediately, even with the bail of $1 million, because the people would not stand for my remaining in jail. They agreed that I probably would be released. I was always arrogant with policemen. If you take any other attitude with them, they interpret it as weakness because they assume an inmate superiority or innate superiority over you. When they stopped at a little truck cafe on King City to get coffee and donuts, they asked me if I wanted any. I said no. Later, they asked me where H. Rat Brown was. Again, I had no idea. I cannot imagine why they asked me, since I certainly would not have told them even if I had known. Coming up on Salinas, we passed Soledad State Prison. eerie in the early morning light. The gray walls loomed up, silent and ominous in the half light. I thought of all my brothers in there and George Jackson. It was weird and unsettling to be such a short distance from them without their having the slightest awareness of it. But they were probably asleep at that hour. The deputy said they were glad they did not work at Soledad because of the militancy of the prisoners and the constant trouble and upheaval. They talked about different prisons in the state and asked me about the penal colony. I described the layout and physical facility, which are probably better than any other penitentiary in the state, with the exception of Chino. Chino has far better facilities, a swimming pool and golf course, and prisoners are allowed to wear their own clothes. Also, security is less strict. The penal colony is only about 10 years old, so it is also cleaner than most, but all prisons are the same. An inmate has to live in a space 10 by 7.5 feet with a toilet, wash basin, desk, chair, bunk, and concrete floor, no matter where he is. When you are locked in a room like that day after day, it does not matter where you are. The deputies admitted that there seemed to be no answer to the problems of prison and that they seemed to think, oh, wait. The deputies admitted that there seemed to be no answer to the problems of prison, that they just do not work. Conjugal visits for prisoners would help, they seemed to think, the way it worked in Mexico, despite the poor physical facilities and conditions. I pointed out that since 80% of the inmates in the penal colony were homosexuals, it probably would not make much difference there. The fuck is up with this student? Oh shit, I lost my place.
Oh, he at it again.
Again. And it don't even, it's such a blatant contradiction. Like you just talked about as a concentration camp, but yet they have autonomy. Like, what are you, anyway. They talked for a while about Mexico, how nice it is there in the summer and how beautiful the parks and buildings are, particularly in Mexico City. But one of them said that every time he goes to a Latin country, even Mexico, he is afraid a guy like Castro will take over and kidnap all the Americans and not let them return to the United States. I'm laughing because I have this beautiful image of that video, babe, of those fucking crackers running from the Palestinians.
They was running, bro. Like they getting the fuck up out of there. Not to
Yo,
the
he's
Palestinians.
what's that? What is the that tweet? Like, oh, y'all can object all y'all want. They bags is already at the airport. Like,
Yeah.
give a fuck if y'all agree with this or not. It's done.
Yeah.
Oh, good times. This needs to be a holiday for real. Like that shit is, I mean, great images. Them when I say them crackers was high stepping to them fucking airports, high stepping. Like, god damn.
I'm gonna put it in the jumbo for y'all if y'all haven't seen it yet.
Oh, yes,
To
absolutely.
see.
Beautiful sight. Oh, they know. I was like, yeah, they know where their real homeland is now. Like they hurry up and went. They heard one bomb was like, oh, pack the bags, let's go. Jimmy, come on to the plane.
They coming back to Brooklyn.
Okay. Yo. Oh, just a beautiful day. Oh, okay, my bad. I lost my place. Okay, but one of them said that every time he goes to Latin country, even Mexico, he's afraid a guy like Castro would take over and kidnap all the Americans and not let them return to the United States. I assured him that even if someone like Castro came to power, he would probably pay the cops trip back on the fastest plane. I was gonna say, don't nobody want y'all. This is what is done in Cuba. Flights for counter-revolutionaries leave frequently. Fidel's policy is that anyone who wants to should get out immediately. Even Cuban nationals, members of the bourgeois, are allowed to leave. And most of them now live in Miami. So many, in fact, that is called Little Havana. Cops are genuinely uninformed and politically naive, but on the subject of socialism, they are especially ignorant. It was beginning to get light as we drove through Gilroy, 33 miles south of San Jose, about 5:30 a.m. All the way back to Oakland, I could not take my eyes off the passing landscape, yet my impressions were hazy, partly because we drove so fast, but mainly because it was just too much for me to take in. It was the sensation of being heavily bombarded with the variety of stimuli. Most people take those stimuli for granted, But after 2 years in a restricted and monotonous environment, it is impossible to absorb what you see. We passed houses, fields, farm laborers, animals, and all sorts of sights grown dim in my memory. The mountain in the distance, the sky, the movements of life. I wanted them all at once, but I could not handle it. It disturbed me. Shortly after Gilroy, we stopped at a gas station to fill up, and the driver asked me if I wanted to go to the bathroom. I said no, and he ambled around the side of the station while the other cop stayed with me. The attendant was a young kid who did not seem to know his way around cars. After he started the gas, he opened the front door of the car with the comment that the lights were on. When he hit the button to cut them, the cop became very tense, but the boy did not notice anything inside. Then he went to front to check the water and oil. He opened the hood about the same time. The other cop came out of the bathroom and, turning to the cop, he said, "What's this?" indicating something under the hood. When the cop told him it was the siren, the boy turned bright red, quickly closed the hood, and went around to finish the gas. Then he kind of peeked in the car, and when he saw my chains, he got even more flustered. When we pulled off, I watched him out of the window, out of the rear window, standing there in amazement. We ran into some commuter traffic around San Jose, nothing too bad, and finally about 7 a.m. arrived in Oakland. The streets were still deserted. I noticed immediately how many things had changed. There were buildings I had never seen before. We went by there. We went by the construction site of a new Bay Area rapid transit building and the new museum that had been going up while I waited trial. During those 11 months, I used to watch this day-to-day progress from the county jail. The deputies named the new buildings, telling me about them and trying to be friendly in their own way. When they indulged in small talk of a pleasant kind and asked me questions, I did not hesitate to answer them. Not that it brought us closer, nothing so superficial would do that, but it is the easiest way to keep the situation cool. As a matter of fact, I recommended this kind of behavior, no matter what is going through a person's mind. It is always to his advantage to keep the enemy off balance. As we drove through the Oakland streets, the deputies talked to the police at the county jail and told them we were coming into the courthouse through the tunnel. The answer was to use the front entrance because the elevator was tied up. We swung around to the front of the building, right across from the Little Marriott Park, where Little Bobby Hutton's rally was held after his funeral in 1968. It brought back memories. For the better part of the year, from the window of the jail, I had watched the park and people walking in it. Now, a few people were on the street. How colorful their clothes seemed. This is what I mean by being bombarded with overwhelming amount of stimuli all at once. I could not get a clear impression of any one thing. Everything tended to blur and become indistinct. Yeah, indistinct. The whole experience was devastating. Well, I had been for 33 months, everyone wore the same clothes, did the same things, and went to the same place every day. You never wondered where people were going or what they were doing. On any day, all you expected to happen was what had happened the day before and the day before that. In my first few days outside jail, I had to make an attempt to remain calm, to keep the action and unpredictability from exciting my nervous system. Even the sight of ordinary activities such as cars stopping for traffic lights, some going in one direction and some in another, people in the street, was too much. When we stopped in front of the jail, the shackles were removed from my legs, although the chains on my waist and arms were left on. The people carried my baggage while I walked through the front door. A cop had come down to meet us from the jail on the 10th floor. His face was familiar. When we had a run-in, the cops do not make much of a impression on me. They just come and go, locking me up or letting me out. And that is all there is to it. But this cop's face was too familiar to pass off. I tried to recall what kind of run-in I had had with him. When we got in the elevator, this one had a kind of chicken smile on his face. "Well, are you going to get your old suit back or sweet back?" he asked. "I don't know," I answered, "but I can do time any place in this jail. That's what I did before and I can do it now, particularly since I will probably be out in a few hours." Hold on real quick for a second. "Yeah, I guess so," he replied. "You think you'll make bail? How much do you think it would be? A couple 100,000, maybe 500,000? The same old question. "I'll be out in 2 hours," I said. "Well, it really helps to be rich, eh, Newton?" "Maybe it does," I shot back, "but I'm not rich. The people will sacrifice whatever is necessary to get me out. He changed the subject then. You've gotten big. You must be working out. My mind was not on the conversation. I was still trying to place him. But I said, yeah, I worked out every day. He said, yeah, that's what I said I should have been doing. He had trouble saying that. Suddenly I remembered him. He had gotten pretty fat, but he was the same policeman I had running with in solitary. One night during my trial, about 1 a.m., this fellow came around to take the count with a black policeman. I was half asleep. He opened my door quickly, then starting to close it, he asked, did I wake you up, you asshole? I jumped up. The door was locked, but I guess I woke up half the jail, shouting at him, calling him everything except a child of God, and inviting him back to open the door so he could show what kind of man he was. While I was yelling, the black policeman with him started to laugh as they walked down the hall. I do not know whether he was laughing at me or at his partner. Some of the other inmates who were awake thought he was laughing out of desperation. The other policeman would not come back. He was much too cowardly. The next day, when I went to court, the black cop was still on duty. He must have been pulling 2 shifts that day. I asked him I asked him the white cop's name. He said that he thought we knew each other and were just kidding. I told him that he knew very well I did not kid around with any of them, including himself. The only relationship we had was that of prisoner and guard, nothing else. I did not appreciate the guard's remarks, I said, and I was definitely going to bring it up in court. The black cop said that if I brought it up in court, he would feel compelled to testify on my behalf and say that I was right and the cop was wrong. He had not said anything at that time, he repeated, because he thought we played together all the time. He promised to tell the other cop about my reaction, and after I reminded him that I did not play with any of them, he said no more about it. It did not come up in court, and I never learned whether the black cop would have testified for me. All this was racing through my mind as we rode up the elevator. Once off the elevator, he walked into the bullpen, the waiting area of the jail. The shackles were taken off my hands and waist, and I was stripped and searched again. After I put my clothes back on, we went through the long booking and processing procedure. Then I was assigned to a cell in B tank, which is the receiving and reception tank. Right around the corner, about 15 feet away, was the hospital tank, where inmates are kept in semi-isolation. It holds only about 5 guys, and inmates who have minor illnesses are kept there, but never for very long. Most of the men who come there are either from death row at San Quentin or they're away to death row and awaiting sentence after conviction of first-degree murder. The regular tanks in the county jail are adjoined a day room outside the cells. Inmates are taken out of their cells at 7 in the morning and locked up again at 7 at night, spending the entire 12 hours in between in the day room. They have no access to their bunks during the day, but in the hospital tank, the inmate can go back and forth to their cells whenever they please. The men on their way to death row are put in these tanks because many of them need ready access to the legal material in their cells. They can also keep typewriters in the hospital tank, another taboo in the regular tanks. The hospital tank is called Little Death Row by the inmates because prisoners there are either from death row fighting some part of their case or they are on reversal prior to retrial. Most of the inmates from Alameda County on death row at Quentin went through this hospital tank at one point. I've been there on Little Death Row myself for 4 months while I was in the county jail serving time for Odell Lee assault case. Okay. Trying to find my place. They can also keep typewriters in a hospital. Odell Lee assault case. I had gotten to know a number of guys there then. Within an hour, I was back in touch with inmates I had met there 33 months before. During the interval, some had gone away and come back again to jail on new beefs. One of them was a young guy named Nice Man. Nice Man had gained weight too since I had last seen him. He was a big one, 6 feet 3 inches and 230 pounds, very articulate and bright, but not well educated because he had spent most of his young life inside jails. But nobody was better at survival on the block. This time he was in for bank robbery or kidnapping, I'm not sure which. Of his 22 years, 11 had been spent in various juvenile halls, Tracy and Soledad. I asked the inmates about another friend, McPherson. He was a white guy I became pretty close to, gross, when he did time together in Little Death Row before he had been sent on to death row at Quentin. I had heard something about a reversal, and it turned out to be true. McPherson was in the hospital tank right around the corner, so I yelled out to him. He was happy to hear my voice, and we cut up about old times for a while. When I asked him about his case, he told me he expected to draw another death penalty. He had been convicted again for first-degree murder, and he was going through his penalty phase starting next week. Miss Pearson has only one eye. He lost the other one at Santa Rita prison before he was charged with murder. In isolation, where no one was allowed to talk to him, McPherson went out of his mind and stuck a pencil in his eye. The guard said that when McPherson put this pencil in his eye, he fell out shouting, "I killed Groscher." Groscher was a German engineer whom McPherson was accused and convicted of killing. But McPherson got a reversal because the appellate court ruled him insane at the time of the statement. They ruled that even if he had made the statement, it cannot be used against him as a confession. At the new trial, they convicted him all over again when his cousin, who at first had been charged with the murder, took on a wheeler-dealer attorney for himself, got immunity from the prosecution, then testified against McPherson. The cousin admitted participating in the murder, but testified that McPherson did the killing, and no amount of denial could save McPherson. His cousin never did any time. About 10 a.m., two of my attorneys came to discuss bail, which they thought would probably be about $100,000. They were trying to get me released on my own recognizance, but the outcome was uncertain. The district attorney seemed very indulgent and cooperative, which would have been surprising under any circumstances, but was particularly unexpected now because the district attorney was Lowell Jansen, the prosecutor in my trial. Ooh, oh shit. He had succeeded Frank Coakley as district attorney of Alameda County. We puzzled over this new attitude and decided that Jensen knew bail in my case was inevitable. Therefore, he was being cooperative to show his quote-unquote fairness. Defeat would have been a strike against him, and bail was mandatory anyway, since I could no longer be tried for a capital offense. But how much would it cost? My attorneys had gone first to court, and the judge had sent them to the district attorney. When they tried that, Jensen had told them to see the judge. They were just passing the buck back and forth. But finally, when the district attorney was notified that the buck stopped with him, he resigned himself to it. My lawyers pointed out that I had never jumped bail and had always appeared in court on time. Jensen said he believed that I would show up in court, so there was no question of not granting bail. While he did not want to upset the Black community by setting bail too high, he also did not want to make his friends angry by setting it too low. As far as Jensen was concerned, justice had nothing to do with the procedure, only politics. My attorneys reminded him that in cases like mine, where a person has a reputation for showing up in court, bail is usually never higher than $5,000. Although Jensen agreed, he said he would have to set a higher bail because I had already been convicted, because of the seriousness of the matter, and because Eldridge Cleaver had jumped bail. This
Child.
nigga. My It's like he find any reason to bring this nigga up. I'm like, yo, we didn't need to know that. Let me stop. Hold on, I'm gonna grab some water.
We hate Eldridge Cleaver in this.
All day.
He's an asshole.
Mm-hmm. My lawyer said we would agree to something like $10,000, although they felt that amount was too high. These negotiations took place in the district attorney's office on Tuesday morning, August 4th, and I was scheduled to appear in court the next day, Wednesday. While they talked, I waited in jail, and my attorneys reported from time to time. Meanwhile, nothing much had changed at Alameda County Jail. Poor food, dirty cells, harassment by guards, and 100 other human indignities were routine. Nice Man and I had a good discussion about the Black Panther Party. He was a tank trustee with more freedom than the rest. One of Nice Man's duties was to pass out food to the rest of the prisoners at mealtimes. For this, he got an extra sandwich and coffee. Every day around 6 p.m., the police escorted the trustees bringing the food from the kitchen to the tank, and Nice Man passed it out in the day room. That Tuesday, just 12 hours after I arrived, a number of inmates were inside their cells. I do not know why. Maybe they were not feeling well. This meant that the cop was supposed to open a gate to each cell so that the trustee could give the prisoner his food. Otherwise, the trustees would have to slide the tray under the door. There is an excellent reason not to slide the trays. The bars of the cells are filthy, and if a tray of food is slid under, crud is likely to fall into it. More than 2 years before this, when I was first in Alameda County Jail, a grand jury had toured the jail, and one of their recommendations had been that no food was to pass underneath the door. When Nice Man asked the guard to open up, the cop refused and told Nice Man to slide the tray underneath. Nice Man refused, explaining why. At this point, the cop went into an irrelevant diatribe, telling Nice Man if he acted like a man, he would treat him like a man. Nice Man said that he did not want to be treated like a man, he wanted to be treated like a convict, and in turn, he would treat the cop like a policeman. Nice Man is an interesting person to watch in tense situations because he moves when he means things and now he was making little movements with his arms and legs. The argument went back and forth for some time. Finally, Nice Man slid the food underneath the door, but the argument continued. I tried to get Nice Man to cool it. I know what happens in situations like that. When you are locked down, there is no win. And while you have to defend some principles all the way, others do not infringe upon basic rights, and it's best to go along until conditions are more favorable. In other words, it is hard to win, and most of the time you lose. Before going too far, you should be sure that the principle is worth your life. Now it escalated. Every time the cop said something, Nice Man replied. Sliding the food under the door was no longer the subject. It was just an angry argument heavy with insults. I tried again to get Nice Man to stop arguing, but he would not. He just stood there at the door to the tank, going back and forth with the cop, moving and twitching. Everyone else was eating quietly and watching. Y'all so messy. Abruptly, the cop left. I told Nice Man about the grand jury finding years before. He was absolutely right, I said, but he ought either to do something or not do it, but not argue about it. He should just let the chips fall where they may, because arguing would not get anything done. I think it was supposed to be done. 10 years later, when all was cool again, the cop came back and ordered Nice Man to roll it up. He was going to the hole. Nice Man flew into a rage. He was not going, and the cop went away for reinforcements. In the county jail, every prisoner has a wooden box where he keeps his possessions, and as soon as the cop left, Nice Man got his box out, jumped on it, and broke off a piece of wood about 4 feet long and 2 inches thick. Then he stood there, waiting for the onslaught. The cop who had provoked this incident was black, and now he came striding back with 6 of his white colleagues. The 7 of them opened the gates, ordered everybody else to roll into the cells, and told Nice Man to come with them to the hole. Nice Man stood silently, clutching his club. And passé. Had we rolled into our cells, Nice Man would have been left alone in the day room with them. Everyone looked at me. I did not move. Nobody else did either. If I had moved, it would have been to go down with Nice Man, since he was a friend of mine, and 100% right. And wondering why the other inmates did not roll in, it finally dawned on me that I was the reason. So we stood frozen, the cops with their long clubs and their mace, the inmates watching, and Nice Man with his broken box. This kind of unified action is unusual among inmates in jail. I've been in a number of uprisings at the Alameda County Jail, and each time there was always a split between the guys who would ease back into their cells and those who were willing to defy the guards. This time, the prisoners were solid. White, black, and Chicano. Finally, 2 cops convinced Nice Man to come out, and I went over to the bars to intervene and asked the policeman if I could speak with him. He said no, and another cop shouted, "If no one will roll in, do you guys know what that means? This is a riot, an insurrection, disobeying orders. You have one last chance." Still no one moved. Then the other cop turned to me and said, "Newton, did you have something to do? Did you have something to say to me?" I went back to the bars and spoke to him in a low voice, telling him that he was wrong because he had provoked the whole thing. It was a matter of saving face now, I said, and Nice Man also had to save face and not be intimidated. They could both save face by a compromise. I would try to convince Nice Man to move to another tank with the same facilities as Tank B. In this way, they would still be in authority, but Nice Man would not be punished, which was best because he had been right all along. If they would not accept this plan, trouble was certain. Since I was going to court to be released the next day, I really don't I really did not want a battle, but I had made up my mind to be involved if it was forced on me. I was not going to let them take Nice Man to the hole without a fight. While I talked, the policemen gathered around and listened. Finally, they accepted the plan and promised they would not jump Nice Man once he came out of his cell and that they would not put him in the hole. Then I went over to Nice Man and explained the plan to him. At first, he refused, then reluctantly agreed to go out, dropping his weapon inside his cell and walking down the hall with the guards close behind. We listened for scuffling, but heard nothing. About 15 minutes after the incident, this same black cop came back and ordered everyone to roll in. Then, after the inmates were locked up, he called me to the bars and informed me that I would be isolated the next day. When I asked him why, he cited the incident. Was he saying that I was responsible for the incident? I asked. No, he said. My presence was the reason the prisoners would not roll in when ordered, and the reason they resisted as one group. I told him that I doubted that I was the cause of their united action. The prisoners showed their solidarity because they were tired of being mistreated and pushed around. As for me, I went on to say I could do time anywhere, including a hole, because I did not have long to stay. So move me wherever you want to, I told him. There is no argument whatsoever. Then I added that he did not have to wait until the next day. I could go right away because I wanted to get situated at once and be comfortable. I do not like to move once I get settled in a cell. He began to excuse himself, saying, It's not my fault. It's already on the movement sheet that you have to be isolated anyway. You can wait for the next shift to isolate you in the morning. But I told him no explanation was necessary. They could move me right away. Actually, the whole was a bluff. They had me scheduled to go to Little Death Row around the corner and took me there that night. When I arrived, I found my friend McPherson and two other guys, one of them a brother with a murder beef on him who was a real a psych case. He could not have been in jail, but in a hospital or whatever. Or, well, he should not have been in jail, but in a hospital, or rather in good hands, because the hospitals are no good. He was obsessed with his earlier time in a hospital where they filled him with poison and gave him shock treatments. Back in a hospital, he felt sure he would die. He had earlier killed a guy on the street who approached him the wrong way and put his hands on him, a violation of the code on the block. For people like that, he explained that he kept a sharp knife sitting on his porch, sharpening his knife with a stone all day long, watching to make sure that no pervert messed with the little girls in his neighborhood. The new murder beef went like this. One day, as he sat in a restaurant talking to a lady friend, some guy rushed up and poked his finger on his chest, saying, Don't talk to my woman. When the guy did that, the brother slit his throat. He did not want to be in jail, and he feared returning to the hospital. As far as the hospital was concerned, he was right to be fearful, but he did he did need help. He should not have been in jail. The other white guy had been on death row in Quentin for a few years before his reversal. He was preparing to go to trial again. McPherson, the fourth guy, was my old friend, convicted again and waiting for sentencing. He thought he had little chance of escaping big death row. I'm gonna go ahead and stop after this page. It's almost done. Little Death Row was a depressing experience. When I had been there before, I was facing the gas chamber too and felt more a part of it. We were all in the same thing, McPherson, myself, and another guy who is now on Big Death Row. Back then, I had accepted Little Death Row as a thing to be dealt with, but now I would be on the streets in a few hours while the others might never walk out. Knowing I could do little. What? Is it? Oh, I see. I sent you the goals. Let me see if you got it. You got it? No. Hold on. I'm trying to make choose a co-host right quick. Okay, let me finish this last paragraph.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say you've been reading for hours, so
Oh, good looking out. I'm gonna finish this last one, then we'll be done.
okay.
Little Death Row was a depressing experience. When I had been there before, I was facing the gas chamber too and felt more a part of it. We were all in the same thing. Oh, sorry to read that. But they all wished me luck. I bedded down for the night, with these things going around in my mind, knowing that it was the last night I would spend in jail for some time. It had been a long day, and I rested well. The next morning, I had to be in court at 9:15. My attorneys came early, and we talked for a short time until I was herded into an elevator with so many other inmates we could hardly breathe. They were all interested in my case, and knowing that I would be out soon, asked me questions and tried to find out if I would do errands for them or other favors. Stop there and got at least another section out the way.
Good. You did a good job. You ate that
Mhm.
up. For real.
Yeah,
You be reading for us for a whole hour. That's like mad work. So thank you. I appreciate
thank
you.
you. It's all good.
Mm,
Thank you. So I'm probably going to end the space. And of course, y'all take care and let's get free. And I'll see y'all in the next space.
period.